The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows. And if you guys haven't done so already, be sure to check out our Patreon page over at patreon.com/afteractionproject, as well as everything or Southwest Gunsmith Technologies on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. We're at Kennedy's over here out in Moriarty or Edgewood of New Mexico, doing some great stuff, building some custom competition 1911s and all that other good stuff, fixing up general repairs. Started doing some laser stippling, however you say that fancy word, as well as some pretty cool engraving. So give those guys a like, check them out if you wouldn't mind. And any questions that you have for us tonight, feel free to get those going down in the comments section. We are joined by Karl Rehn. We're going to review his advanced handgun course. His two students tonight are Robert and John, and Andy joins us again tonight. So before we get into it too much, Andy, why don't you tell our viewers what you've been up to and what you have going on over the next couple weeks?
Man, well, the first thing I'm doing is I'm looking at the video and everybody's got their names there. And Jeremy's got USPSA Heavyweight Division Shooter. So I'm spending my whole time over here trying to figure out how to change my name to Bald and Badass. But I can't figure it out. So I guess we'll move on.
It's too late. So I put that in when I was joining just to do test, and I was goofing off. And then I get in here and I was like, oh crap, I'm going to have to redo this thing. And then Robert joined on, and I was like, oh, I guess it's too late. I guess my true USPSA classification is going to be out there to the whole internet and world. I'm unclassified, but unofficially, I guess I'm going to claim the heavyweight division shooter.
I mean, there are some guys out there, Vada, that claims to be the best. So, why not you two? Man, I've been working a lot with my regular paying job. And then on the weekends, Jeremy and I have been teaching a lot on the range. Gotten to get some trigger time with Tim Heron. You guys may know who that guy is. Really good guy. Went and trained. He got me down to a draw to 0.89 seconds one time, which I was pretty proud of. So doing a little bit of training, doing a lot of teaching. And for the next, 3-4 weeks, Jeremy, I think we have classes every weekend. So pretty much not going to have a day off until about Christmas, I think.
Yeah, you're welcome for that. Awesome. And then Robert and John, tell us a little bit about what you do and talk to us briefly about civiliangunfighter.com.
Sure. Okay, so I'm Robert, co-founder of Civilian Gunfighter. I'll let John maybe talk a little bit more about that. But I'm a teacher, a special education teacher, actually, in a high school. I'll just describe it as one of the most crime-ridden cities in the United States, the butt end of many jokes, that type of thing. I live just outside the city, but work in the city.
I was going to say, wait a minute, you live in Albuquerque?
I was going to say, yeah.
Wrong coast, man. No, but the butt end of more jokes than Albuquerque, trust me. So anyway, I guess I started training sort of earnestly in 2013. I took NRA basic pistol probably in 2008, 2009, something like that. But I started to get into training a lot more in 2013. Now, as of this weekend, I took a class this weekend, I'm up around close to 600 hours of training, mostly handgun, but there's been carbine, there's been shotgun, there's been some unarmed combatives, some edged weapons, legal, self-defense stuff, pepper spray. So sort of like, a little bit of everything, but, primarily focused on firearms. I guess I'll start with, as far as Civilian Gunfighter goes, John and I met actually in a class in 2013 was the first class that we took together, and then we just kept running into each other in classes, and as people, I'm sure a number of the viewers, maybe you guys discovered this too, as you take more classes, you start to run into the same people over and over again, because and Karl knows this obviously all too well.
That real good
for his book, right? That there's only so many people who really get out there and train. So we started to run into each other more and talking more, and we actually started just communicating more, sort of offline, just because I was buying something from him or whatever. And then, as we took more classes, we started, pinging ideas back and forth with each other. This class, what do you like about this class? What didn't like about this one? And somewhere along the way, we just decided to just to sort of share our experience, I guess is the best way of putting it. We don't profess to be experts in any of this stuff, although as we've, absorbed more training over the years, I guess, I would never throw the word expert around to describe me in any way, but at least as far as this stuff goes. But I think we just have more to share, more to offer. We know there's people out there who maybe want to train but can't for any number of reasons, financial, geographical, whatever. So it's just good to share. I just like to write, so it's kind of neat because we're not like a YouTube-based site or anything like that. We use the old-fashioned. We just write. John had actually started or obtained the name Civilian Gunfighter before we even met or whatever, and we just decided to go with it. Doesn't describe maybe everything that we do, but I guess it gets to the heart of it. But I'll let John go from there.
Yeah. Well, basically, I just pretty much consider myself an average guy. I mean, I've got a full-time job. I've got a family, 2 kids. I've been in EMS, emergency medical services, for almost 2 decades now, paramedic for over a decade. Started my training journey fairly long time ago, back in 1997 with Tom Givens at the original Rangemaster in Memphis, Tennessee. Took about a 5-year hiatus. Went to Gunsight in 2004, give or take. Took some more time off, and then probably about 2014, 15, really jumped in head first, and most people would probably call me a training junkie today. I still think of myself as just an average guy that takes his personal security pretty seriously. But the blog, I don't know, I've always sort of written on my off time. And as Robert said, I had the domain name that I had obtained for potentially a different purpose. We were communicating, talking about classes, and just decided one day, you know what, let's do it. And we started the blog, and we've been at it now since 2015 and have a whole bunch of after action reviews of various classes on there, a few other articles, the occasional gear review, things of that nature. And it's really grown into its own thing, and met a lot of people doing it. And that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. Got a bunch of writers on the podcast today, a bunch of writers and shooters. Karl Rehn, we had you on a couple weeks ago talking about your recently published book, Strategies and Standards for Defensive Handgun Training. For the listeners that might not have caught that episode, give us a quick 2-minute breakdown of that book, who it's for, and then lead into your advanced handgun course description, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. The strategies book, which I happen to have right here. Hey, how about that? The strategies book came about. It's a collection of talks that I gave at the Rangemaster Tactical Conference over the last couple of years, and it incorporated some material that one of my assistant instructors, John Dobb, put together. The first part of the book is basically discussing what training is out there, what training people need, and sometimes what training people go to that they maybe don't need, and just trying to help people get organized on what their training needs are. The rest of the book is really about standards. It's about what standards are the absolute minimum that anyone should have for defensive handgun. And then the last third of the book really is about what does the pathway look further than that, to mastery, to automaticity, if you want to be a grandmaster, just sort of understanding the math and the numbers, and here's how the skills break down, and here's how to take any drill that you come across and figure out how difficult it is. So you can sort of structure yourself a path of skill guidelines. The book ends with 10 drills in order, that if you just take the last 3 pages of the book, take those 10 drills and work through them, by the time you get to drill number 10, you'll be, reasonably to extremely competent shooter.
Perfect. I love it.
Y'all want to work on the, it says no sound on Facebook.
Doesn't say no sound on Facebook. All right. Yeah, I'll get that fixed right now.
Yep.
I'll fire my audio engineer too.
There you go. The advanced handgun course is basically, a lot of my material is done in 4-hour blocks. When I teach at home, I do a lot of short courses. I took 2 of my highest level short handgun courses and stuck them together and made a 1-day traveling roadshow class that basically goes through a series of standards exercises where every drill is shot for score, and it gives students basically homework. At the end of the class, they get a two-sided sheet that's full of numbers, full of drills. Here's what you did. And then we go at the end of it and discuss, well, here's where you should be. Here's your goals. Here's how to practice to get better at those things. So again, it's a very numbers-oriented. There's no top shooter award. There's no grade for the course. It's a way to measure it. Here's where I am. And then if I go work on these drills some more, here's where I should try to get to.
Awesome. I love it. We should have audio back up here in just a minute while we're getting that fixed. Robert and John, talk to us a little bit why you took the advanced handgun course with Karl Rehn. And then you kind of mentioned that you guys have been almost lifelong students of the gun. You've been shooting or receiving training pretty extensively for the last few years. And if you would have to break down your baseline as a student going into that course, do that if you're able to as well. Just kind of let our listeners know where you were at as far as your handgun shooting capabilities were.
Okay, I'll start. If that's cool with John. Going into the course, I shoot competitively some. I shoot IDPA. It's just what's mostly available closer to where I live. I'm currently classified as an expert in I guess it's probably 4 different divisions in IDPA. So that's kind of where I am with that, if that helps anybody. I don't know. I've taken, do you want training resume kind of stuff, or if that helps, or?
Yeah, if you wanted to, you can give them a brief.
I'm not going to sit here and rattle off every course I've taken, but I did in summer of 2018, I took Tom Gibbons' 3-day instructor course. It's a handgun course, 3-day instructor. And I was actually top gun of the class. So, but I think that was a bit of a anomaly. I was just really seeing things really well. I don't really think of myself as that good, but it was a great class, of course. But so I kind of feel like maybe just another example. I'm big on Tom Gibbons. So when I shoot his one of his I don't know if you call it standards, his core, what he calls his core skills test or whatever, I typically come out in that at the low end of advanced. I forget what the numbers are. Maybe it's 120 or something like that, whatever it is. But that's where I usually score whenever I shoot that, which might be a couple times a year. I'll give that a go. So that's kind of where I was going in. So I felt like, in terms of the description of the course, of Karl's course that we're talking about here today, that it was kind of in the wheelhouse for me. That I'm a pretty good shooter, want to get better. I saw it as a class that I could probably get some tweaks, speed some things up, shave off some time here and there or whatever. I'm not a diehard competition guy. Like I said, I shoot IDPA, but I don't necessarily, I hate to say I don't shoot it to win it, because then it sounds like, oh, well, it's just a cop out if he doesn't win. I typically in the local matches I shoot will finish in the top 25% of both overall and in whatever division I happen to shoot that day, SSP or CCP or whatever. Depends on which gun I bring that day. So I was just looking to for me, it's everything is geared towards defensive stuff. So IDPA I just use as a vehicle for practice to do things I can't do with this on my local indoor range, stuff like that. I'm not all about the my IDPA stuff, but and I might shoot 5 or 6 matches a year. So for me, like I said, just shaving off some time here, looking for efficiencies there, that type of thing was mainly what I was looking for. As far as why Karl, why not somebody else? I've been to TACCon, the Rangemaster Tactical Conference that Karl just mentioned, twice now, 2017 and 2019. And on neither occasion, as people who go to TACCon know, you have to make some hard decisions about which seminars you're going to take. They're kind of wide open. And sometimes there's one seminar you want to take, and there's another one that you really want to take, and it's the same time, or whatever. Or if you're participating in a match, that might be at the same time that a seminar is offered, or whatever. So in 2 different occasions that I've gone, I've never gotten to do anything with Karl. Never took one of his seminars or anything. But I know John had, and I know a bunch of other people have either trained with Karl in a more formal way or just at TACCon. They're always they say the same things. Karl's a really smart guy. He knows what he's talking about, good insights, all this other stuff, great shooter. So when I saw that John Murphy of FBF Training was hosting him. He hosted him last year for, I think it was 2 classes. I think it was the same class plus the historical handgun class, if memory serves. But I just didn't work out.
Yeah, that's correct.
It just didn't work out in my schedule. So so when I saw that it was offered, I kind of jumped all over it. And I guess one last thing I'll mention is that I really wanted to take Tom Gibbons' advanced instructor course this year, which John Murphy was hosting. And just because of some things that were going on family-wise and stuff, I had to back out and couldn't take it. But I really like to take a dedicated, like, technical handgun class each year, just to kind of see where I am and improve or whatever. And this, again, just seemed like the perfect class at the perfect time. So.
Nice. So John, tell me about yourself too. So you took his course? Is that where you started when you seen him with the Givens classes, or did you know about Karl prior to that?
I knew about him. I think I pretty much found out at TACCon. So last year was my 3rd year at TACCon, and at least 2 times I'd sat in on his lectures, whether it was the 1% lecture, and I forget what you did the year prior, Karl, but at any rate, was very impressed with
probably the red dot paper.
It was either that, or I think it may have actually been your historical handgun and beyond the 1%, maybe, is what I had seen the seminars on. But at any rate, I had seen him present at TACCon, so I was obviously interested there. I had gotten his book at the last TACCon and had actually started working through it, and was, somewhat gratified to discover that I was pretty much accurate in my assessment. I'm an average shooter at best. I don't really shoot competition aside from the occasional steel match at the club. And, typically I come in middle of the pack there. And one of the things that Robert touched on in the written AAR on our blog that, really resonated with me is, despite all the training I've taken over the past few years, I very much feel like I have hit a plateau that's been really hard to get past. And so the class that he offered, Karl offered there, it really looks like it provides a framework and a set of tools to gradually move past that plateau and advance more on in just the skill set. So that's pretty much why I drove all the way down to Virginia to take the class.
So did you, when you went to TACCon, was it planned to sit with Karl Rehn in his seminar, or was it just you kind of stumbled into that one? How did you come across wanting to see his?
The first time was probably I was looking to just fill a hole in the schedule. I was interested in what he was presenting, but then, the next year it was a priority to go and sit in that because it's worth your time.
Yeah. So I think, Karl, you were on Civilian Carry Radio a little while back. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I believe you were talking about the historical handgun. And one thing that hit my head that still I remember, because, red dots are slowly getting more and more popular these days. And in fact, I carry a red dot now myself. And you talked about the red dots being, they first came out back in the 80s. Is that something that you said? Do you recall that?
Probably so. It's come up more than once. It's, the history of it is actually was with Rob Leatham and a bunch of other the old guys this past weekend. And 1990 was the first year a national championship in USPSA was won with a red dot on a pistol. And so, I started shooting red dots on the pistols, 92, 93. And so it makes me laugh when everybody's like, oh, it's this brand new thing and it's so revolutionary. I'm like, yeah, I shot a red dot for a decade before 2001. So it's, they're fine. They're out there and they're available. I've actually playing with a new dot on my pistol right now that's got a EOTech style reticle instead of just a dot, and evaluating that to see what I think about it right now. So.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I was going to say I put the Shield RMSC on my Glock 48, and everything they say about the polymer lens is true. It's not as durable as I would like. I got a couple scratches on there, but nothing too crazy.
Well, what I'm using right now is from Swamp Fox Optics. They're fairly new. It's called the Kingslayer, and it has a green reticle with a circle and a dot in the middle of it, which is basically what I spec'd out and talked about in the red dot presentations that I did several years ago. And apparently they were listening, and they actually built built a dot. It fits on the RMR footprint, and they're very competitively priced. So I picked one up, and I've just started playing with it today, and I'm going to run it for the next month or so, and then I'll write about it after I've put a couple thousand rounds through it, at least to get a better idea if I like it or if I don't.
Do you remember
that
what
sounds
the
similar to the
MSRP is on that?
Holosun.
MSRP is under 300. It's competitive with the Holosun.
Okay. Yeah, I'm running the Holosun myself now, and I bought it, and of course, it says the battery's good for 10,000 hours. I had it about 2 or 3 months, and all of a sudden it started not coming on, and the reticle would change on me and do all kinds of funny, weird stuff. And I was like, okay, step one, change the battery, and all those problems went away, which was kind of interesting. But yeah, I'm looking for another red dot for a second competition gun that I have. And Swamp Fox, as you said, it's kind of come by storm here recently. I've seen more and more people talk about Swamp Fox optics, especially like We Like Shooting and those podcasts. So I'm kind of interested to see more about it. So I'd like to read your blog once you get it done.
Yeah, check back in about a month. I'm gonna use it. I'm hosting Gabe White later this month, and I'm gonna use this 48 with that dot on there for the Gabe White class, and that ought to beat it up and wear it out pretty good.
Nice, Robert or John. Do you guys run red dots or irons, or what do you run?
I experimented with an RMR on a Glock, and honestly, I'm back to iron sights right now. I'm really interested in going with the Holosun though, just based on what I've seen recently. So.
Yeah,
that's about where I'm at.
Yeah, I too, I had an RMR on one of my Glock 19s for a bit. What I found personally, and I know not everyone experiences this, but what I found personally was that I felt like I needed a red dot on every gun. I guess what I would say. So I felt like every bit of practice that I put into using the one with the red dot on it, that was taking away from my iron sight work, and I felt like every time I shot with irons, it was taking away from red dot work. And I know other people say that red dot work will improve your iron sight work. I just didn't find it to be the case. I really just
I don't think that's true. I mean,
yeah, some people say
that's like saying shoot. Yeah, it's like saying shooting revolver is going to help your 1911 shooting. No, if you want to get good at something, practice that thing. And,
yeah, I got that lesson in class. just in general.
Really overrated.
Yeah, I gave it up because I felt like I needed to then buy, because I have several different Glocks, and I felt like I needed to buy like 4 RMRs, get the slides milled, the whole bit, and I can't afford that. So eventually, I was just looking at it as, a couple $100 in my safe that wasn't really getting used at a time when I really wanted to dedicate the time to really learn how to shoot my irons better. So at that point, I was just like, yeah, I sold the slide, sold the milled slide and everything, and at this point, haven't looked back. As my eyes continue to deteriorate over time, then I'll probably revisit, but we'll see.
You'll know that both Robert and I wear glasses.
Yeah, I do too. I'm just not wearing them right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find when I present my I don't line the sights up the same when I'm using the red dot as I do with irons. I know they're aligned, but it's the presentation isn't the same. And I thought, oh yeah, well, because everybody says, oh yeah, you're a better red dot shooter, you're a better iron sight shooter. Be interested to see when I go back to shooting irons if that's the case for me. Talking specifically about the advanced handgun course, Karl, who is the ideal student candidate for that course? And then I'm going to follow that up. We have a listener question, but I wanted to kind of get your perspective on who the ideal student candidate is for that class.
The ideal student candidate is somebody that's a middle of the pack match shooter, somebody that's already had a class on how to draw from concealment, like a Tom Givens combative pistol, any kind of a 2-day class that goes beyond the state carry permit. It's not a course for people that have never had a formal class in how to draw. I mean, the very first thing we do in the class is 25-yard slow fire group shooting. And the perfect student for that class, it should not be the first time they've shot their gun slow fire at 25 yards. But I would say 90% of the people that have carry permits have never done that. And that's one of the most interesting things to me about teaching this particular curriculum is when I say we're going to start out with 25-yard group shooting, the shocked, disappointed, and dismayed expressions. You're like, oh, I thought we were going to do mag dumps at 3 yards. And like, no, we're going to make sure our guns are zeroed and actually make sure we know how to shoot. So that's perhaps makes me unpopular sometimes, but interestingly enough, like I said, talking to Rob Leatham this weekend, and Rob starts his classes with 25-yard group shooting. So I felt pretty good about my decision to do the same thing.
Why is it easier to fill? Sorry, go ahead.
Do what?
I was just going to ask.
The 3-yard mag dump classes?
Yeah, why is it easier to fill those classes than it is to fill the classes that are actually increase your likelihood of surviving a gunfight?
Well, I don't know that the 25-yard group shooting necessarily. It improves your shooting generally, and it makes you, once you have the basics down, that kind of went into that in the book. It's honestly, a lot of this stuff is just happy, fun, shooty gun time, and we go to the range. We've got a new gun, we've got a new scope, got a new holster, whatever. And people go take a class just to, hey, let's go do this as a way to do some structured shooting and do some things we can't do on the range in a regular slow fire practice, 1 shot per second, can't draw your gun from a holster kind of stuff. I get that. I totally get that. A lot of my classes fall into that category where people will come and they'll take it once with a double action, single action. They'll come back with a red dot Glock. They'll come back with a revolver just because it's a good basic workout with the pistol. The advanced class is really for people, like the guys that showed up, people that are bored with the standard 2-day generic defensive pistol, combative pistol, tactical pistol course, that want the next thing. They want to get better. And so it's, the ideal student for it is somebody that's kind of got the other stuff out of their system, that's ready to go, ready to get serious.
Karl, I got a question on that. So I've taken a handful of courses myself, and it kind of exactly on the line of what you're saying about combative pistol style stuff. You go to these classes, and I'm not knocking them because I learned a lot, but at the same time, you run a bunch of drills and you get really limited training because, maybe it's one premier instructor and there's 17 to 20 students on the line. How do you deal with that? Are you able to really narrow down with each individual student to make sure they're getting the instruction that they need?
Yeah, matter of fact, when I host traveling trainers, I ask them about student-to-teacher ratio because I have trained with a few YouTube celebrity, big name, celebrity type guys, and they'll run 27 people on the line and try to coach. They're just calling drills and nobody's learning anything. When I do things like one great thing about when John Murphy hosts is the same thing I provide when I host him or when I host other people. Is John was my assistant instructor, so we ran 8 on the line and basically monitored. I forget, maybe we ran 12 on the line with that course, but generally, many times, and the guys who took the class will tell you, many times I was one at a time, standing. We'd run the drill one at a time with me standing behind that student. So I'm really big on making sure everybody gets individual attention because I, as a graduate of 2,700 hours of training myself from 70 different trainers, there's nothing worse than some guy just kind of phoning it in, shoot, stop shooting, paste your targets. Here's some stories about how great I am. Shoot some more. And thanks for the check. I got to run to the airport with my suitcase full of money. I try not to be that guy, but I have taken those classes from those guys.
And you gotta mix it up because there's 2 parts to it. We've spent a lot of money to go take good courses, so we expect to get all the training and all the one-on-one we can. And that the other part of it, you got to understand that there's other students that need that training too. So we want to be a little bit selfish. But that being said, that's exactly it. As I said, I've taken courses where there's 20 students on the line. And Jeremy and I recently took a course where there was about 6 or 7 of us on the line, and there was limited coaching. So it can go both ways. I just think it's it's just a question that I had for you to do you feel like as an instructor that you give enough coaching individually? And I guess I should probably turn that over to maybe Robert and John and ask them how they felt about that in your class as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's from the instructor perspective. I try when I do the 1 at a time drills, I can't run every drill as a 1 at a time, but the way that course is structured, many of the deals, it's Comstock scoring. And so in order for me to write down your number on your sheet, you have to run it by yourself. And so we would go down the line, and I would stand right behind you and say, okay, shooter ready, go. I'd watch you shoot. We'd get your time. And then that allowed me to see. In the class I did with John, he was on one end of the line, I was on the other. But I tried to rotate around as much as I could, so I got to see everybody. I tried not to stay on one end of the line, although a few times I probably did. But a lot of that's you have to design the class so that it moves quickly and gets rid of downtime. I hate downtime. I hate paying good money and sitting around. And so I try to get all the downtime I can out of the class.
Yeah, I was going to say, Karl did a good job. I mean, I think his description he just gave is pretty accurate. There were 16 students in the class total. Some things we ran, I think, as relays, maybe 8 and 8. And a lot we did sort of one at a time, just moving up and down a line, getting times for everybody. There were a few that we did collectively, maybe with everybody shooting, and we kind of used like a par time rather than everyone's individual time. But you could still, like, if I finished the drill, whatever it was, earlier than everyone else, then I sort of just recognized that. And then I've started going through, actually my last few trips to the range, deliberately going through the drills that we did in class, the ones that are in Karl's book and so forth, and timing them just myself, just to kind of see for myself where we were. But I didn't in any way feel like I was shortchanged in attention from Karl or anything like that. I mean, the 25 yards, I don't know what happened. I do shoot at 25 yards at most range trips. But like, it was like the wheels came off the wagon. I don't know if like the sights flew off my gun or what happened. I don't know. But Karl does this really unique thing I've never seen anyone else do. I've seen someone do something similar, but not the same as Karl, where the first target we shot at is actually a giant plus sign that he tapes on like the back of like a B-27 style target. It's just a blue painter's tape. And it's a plus sign. And the idea is you just line up your sights right at the plus, and then, you shoot, for a group and see where you're hitting. And here I am thinking, I've zeroed my gun, before I know, and like, I don't know where my shots even went. For some reason for me, at 20 yards is where the wheels come off the wagon. That extra 5 yards kills me every time. But it doesn't mean I don't keep working at it. I do. The rest of the class I shot, I thought pretty well. But I felt like I got good coaching there in terms of like the speed at which I was pressing my trigger for 25-yard shots. I remember Karl working with me specifically, individually with that. Working on the draw. I've drawn my gun, I don't know. I mean, how many times? Tens of thousands of times, whatever. And I, have a decent draw, but he kind of like looked at it and was like, maybe some things I do aren't ideal, but he's like, well, if that works for you and the style garment that you typically wear and stuff, then go with it. He kind of watched me do it a few times. It was like, okay, you're good. So I didn't, I felt like I got a good amount of individual attention.
I would agree with that. Whether it's discussing the draw or some specific thing we were doing during the drill, there are definitely enough times where, Karl's behind you with the timer and critiquing what you're doing, moving up and down the line. And I don't really think it slowed down the class perceptibly to run it that way. And even when we split into relays, if you weren't on the line, you had a job to do, and that was to record for your partner what they were shooting. And even the sheet that he talked about that has the your scores from each drill on that gives a sense of individual attention because you know what you shot on that particular drill that day. So yeah, I think the format worked really well in that regard.
Yeah, I'll also add real quick that it was blazing hot that day and like hot and humid, mid-Atlantic horror show that Karl might be used to from Texas, whatever, with heat and humidity. But I think a lot of the students were not, and Karl made it a point to kind of deliberately kind of pick up the pace of the class so that we could end a little bit earlier than it typically might, because you could see people were hitting the wall like after lunch. It was an ugly scene.
Yeah, we probably chopped at least an hour off of it. And what we did, there was a few of those drills and you can even see it on the sheet, where we had 2 runs programmed. One was everybody all shoot together with a par time, and then the intent was to go back down the line a second time and do individual timed runs. Those all got cut because those, particularly toward the end of the day on the back of the second sheet, it's like, here's how you run the drill. Here's a good baseline par time. Let's run it. Okay, that's where you're at. And then rather than at 3 o'clock, spend another 20 minutes everybody go down the line and if we all bake in the heat. It was basically, I opted to tell people, look, you can practice this on your own, and here's how to run the drill, and here's the target, and let's move on to the next thing. And so, part of the class was simply giving people a structure they could take home. I hate having nothing as a take home, so I tried to give a lot of take home. I gave a number of different handouts, and then I don't remember if I emailed everybody in class the sheets or just gave you print copies to take home, but everybody gets the copies where they can replicate the entire class on their own. I mean, quite honestly, one of the things I'm going to do to evaluate that Swamp Fox dot is I'm going to go run all of those drills in my own practice and fill out a sheet on myself, because I know where I'm at on those drills with iron sights, and I can compare that to how I do with the Swamp Fox dot and get an idea of, am I better, am I worse, am I the same? Because for me, that's how I decide about gear. If it helps me shoot better, then that's a good thing. If I change gear and I shoot worse, well, then that's a bad thing. And if I don't have that A/B comparison, I can't make a realistic assessment. A lot of people don't do that. I guess maybe it's my lifetime of engineering, research, test, and development engineering background that I had for 20-something years, that I don't know how you make decisions about life safety equipment without doing just a simple A/B comparison, minimizing the number of variables and really doing an evaluation.
Hey, Karl, really quick, and I'll turn it over to Jeremy. You mentioned the 10 drills in your book. Is that kind of like the same thing as far as reading your book, going through the 10 drills? Is it similar to the same as your course, being able to run through those 10 drills?
Similar, except very few of the drills overlap, because the advanced drills start at about 50% of Grandmaster and go up from there, whereas the book starts at like 0. The 10 drills start at 5% of Grandmaster, and the difficulty level increases up to 60 or 70% by the 16x16 drill at the end. And so the drills in the advanced course, some of them are not in the book, and there are other drills from other sources that are faster time limits and more difficult, more complex drills. There's some overlap, but not complete. We actually have a class we do that's called the Top 10 Drills, and it's a 4-hour class that's nothing but those 10 drills.
That's awesome. We'd love to get a couple students from that class on here when over the next few months. I wanted to ask, what is the first? So it's an 8-hour class, or is it a 2-day course?
It's a 1-day class.
It's a 1-day class. Okay. What does the first half of that day, or the first hour or two of that day, look like for a student, from showing up on the range to putting the gear on? What does that look like from the student's perspective?
For us, well, there's a little bit where Murphy's range is kind of tucked away a little bit, so everyone has to kind of convoy there from a meeting place, but that's no big deal. When we got there, Karl was kind of, as I recall, he was putting up the targets with the plus signs on them, and Murphy, as I recall, did most of like the medical brief, and that type of stuff, because he's more familiar, obviously, with the area and everything. So that was sort of
with most classes, the instructor will get there an hour or even 2 hours early and have everything prepped up and ready to go. With Murphy's particular situation, everybody meets, and so the students and the instructors all arrive at the same time, and so the very first part of class is a little chaotic. You can't put up targets the night before. If they get wet, they melt and get soggy and all that. So you have to do certain things on class day for his range that, for example, with mine, I'm out there all the time, and so it's a little bit easier for me.
Yeah, we have a range that we we use. It's kind of about 45 minutes from where we're at, same kind of deal. But let's get past the target setting up, that admin stuff. What does it look like once you guys get on, I guess, on the line up and you're taking your first few shots?
Well, as I already mentioned, we started off with with the 25 yards. And like I said,
first drill is 5-shot group, no time limit, do the best you can, go. That's pretty much that's where we started.
Yeah. So it's humbling, if someone's never done it before, or taking classes with certain other instructors. Steve Fisher comes to mind as someone I trained with before, where you shoot a lot of 25 yards at 6 or 8 inch circle or whatever. And if you haven't done that before, I mean, it might be scary or whatever, just humbling or whatever. And it was humbling for me just because I particularly sucked that day at that distance. But so be it. I figured I would clean up my act eventually. So that was the first thing, and it was mainly just to see, like, again, like where, I mean, you have ammunition variables, all that stuff. I was actually shooting ammo that I don't typically shoot, so that might have played into it. I can blame that, whatever. But so
Ammo
again,
does
like,
make a difference.
yeah, I mean, it's just like, is your ammo hitting to your sights? And first of all, can you shoot a group, first of all, like, and then if you can shoot a group, is the group where you want the group to be? So that's kind of what we started with.
I don't want to get too far off on that. Sorry to interrupt, but the ammo thing is something that I've kind of, because you have ammunition manufacturers that will manufacture and market ammunition as match grade ammo. How much, and Karl, you might have a little bit better insight into this. How much does ammunition play a role in student accuracy out at 25 yards? And do you see what am I trying to say? So if you bench rested a handgun, right, and you're shooting at 25 yards, what's the typical deviation you would see from just off the shelf FMJ stuff?
Well, you start out with what can the gun mechanically do? If you talk to the manufacturers, they're going to tell you somewhere between 2 and 4 inch groups at 25 yards. If you put the gun in a ransom rest in a barrel machine, you lock it down, and the mechanical accuracy of the gun, if everything is perfect, somewhere in the 2 to 4 inch range. So generally, if anybody's shooting a group smaller than 4 inches, they're at the limit of what the gun can do. I had a student in Portland last Tuesday shoot an 1.5 inch 5-shot group at 25 yards with a factory barrel and lawman ammunition. So, name brand ammunition, Federal is quite good. CCI, the lawman stuff is good. If it's Wolf or Bear or Joe's reloads from down the block, I mean, you can take a good shooter and you can end up with an 8-inch group with, mystery flyers. It depends on how consistently the ammo is loaded, how consistent is the powder charge, how consistent is the overall length. And sometimes you have guns like the original M&Ps, which mechanically were not very accurate. So, the very first run of M&Ps, they were like 6-inch at 25-yard guns, and everybody complained, and they quietly changed a few things about the barrel and the barrel twist, and the later production runs got better. But you have to. That's why we use the plus sign as a way to minimize shooter error, to make sure you're aiming the gun in exactly the same spot on the target every time. So that's going to give you, I tell them 6 to 8 inches, standing up, two-handed shooting. If you can shoot, all your shots in the A zone of the USPSA target, all your shots in the 0 ring of an IDPA, that's all right. If you can get under 6 inches, you keep them all in the bullseye of an NRA B8, that's pretty solid. And then just to give it perspective and say, oh, by the way, the guys that shoot the Camp Perry matches are shooting 1 and 2 inch groups at 25 yards one-handed. So, I mean, that's, if you want to know what's the limit, that's the limit, is 1 inch or better at 25 yards from the bullseye world.
That's impressive. I'm sorry, John, I cut you.
They have match grade barrels with guns, usually 1911s, that have been built extremely tight. Your average off the shelf gun, you're not going to get 1 inch at 25 yards unless you just happen to get lucky one day.
Yeah. No, the previous point, the only thing I'll bring up is that once we got on the line, it's a fast-paced class. It moves pretty good. Certainly there's a little bit of downtime here and there that Karl fills with little lecture points and dropping a few knowledge bombs here and there. But it's fairly fast-paced once the day gets underway. And as far as the ammo go, one of the things that I wrote down from the notes is that, Karl, I believe you said Hornady XTP is probably one of the most accurate rounds that you can shoot.
Hands down, the most accurate.
Yeah.
Anything loaded with the Hornady XTP bullet. I know a lot of people like to crap on Freedom munitions, but Freedom used to load basically reloaded ammo with Hornady XTP bullets, and the bullet is so accurate that it'll tighten up anybody's group. And so Hornady makes ammo loaded with the XTP, and it's a phenomenal handgun bullet.
But that's one of those things that you get from going to a class with Karl, is he addresses mechanical accuracy of the handgun right there in the first hour of the class. That's something I really had never gotten from any other instructor, quite frankly.
Yeah, everything that Karl just said a minute ago is what he told us in class about like mechanical accuracy of a gun. Putting in the rests, what they're typically capable of from the factory and everything. We got that whole shtick right there in class. So.
How big is that the plus sign that you add for that 25-yard shoot?
I don't know if this will show up or not. I don't know. Oh, this may not work, but hold on a second. Let me get in front of the camera. That's Karl. I don't know if it'll work or not.
Hold it right there, Robert.
So like on the back of a B-27 or its equivalent. So it's pretty
It's
big.
like a foot and a half by a foot and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's typically, I use either duct tape or the wide painter's tape. It's usually 1.5 to 2 inch wide tape.
Yeah. And my own experience.
I learned that.
I was just gonna say, a lot of instructors, might have you shoot at something like, a B8 repair center, but at 25 yards, especially if you have like a larger front sight or whatever, and depending on your hold, if you use a 6 o'clock hold, if that's where it hits to, then fine. But if it's more of like, you're covering the, if your front sight has to cover the target, then you can't even really see it. And the plus sign kind of took that all out of the equation. So I really liked it. Yeah.
I think it's a more
Yeah, I have to
forgiving
give
target
credit.
for newer shooters.
I totally stole that from Jerry Micklick. I learned that in the class from him. So I'm sure he got it from somebody else, but that's giving credit, at least where I saw it for the first time was 20 years ago from Jerry. And it makes a big difference. I've seen the difference in my own group sizes. If I use the plus sign to shoot groups versus a B8, I'll get better groups off the plus sign because it gives you so much more visual information to guarantee the gun is aimed at the same place every time. Because everything starts there. If the gun's not aimed at the same place every time, then everything else derives from that.
I want to get back to we have my concealed carry rights had a question. He wants to know, how can the course help the everyday concealed carrier, or what benefits can the EDC carrier receive from the course?
Ooh, okay. Well, the EDC, the person that has a carry permit that's never taken another class beyond the state permit course, probably what they're going to learn from that is, oh my God, I'm a terrible shot and I have no idea what I don't know. And I'm not saying that to be negative. This class, they need a 2-day or 1 day, how to draw from a holster, how to do a reload. It really is. I mean, it's an advanced course, so it's not. There's a gap in there, and there's a class that goes in between. At minimum, probably a class with some serious practice before they're ready for. This class was intended to be the thing that challenged the training junkies, and so the top 10 drills class would be a more appropriate class for somebody that's. Probably wouldn't want a student that had never had a formal class on how to draw from a holster trying to take the advanced handgun course, because the time limits and my expectations, they would constantly be overwhelmed with what they were being asked to do.
Yeah, I think I can maybe add a little point on, just to add on what Karl said, as far as a perspective of an everyday carry person. When I'm not in uniform, I carry a gun every single day of my life, everywhere I go. And what this class is good at doing is refining what you do. It forces your draw to be clean. If you fumble the draw, you're not going to make the time. So that repetition, that his coach's eye, if you will, looking at what you're doing and pointing out the minor details that you can tweak here and there, it really strengthens your game. And like I said, when you're trying to make these standards, you can't fumble the draw. You've got to make it. You've got to have an efficient presentation. You've got to have an efficient use of the sights, understand what you're looking at. So I think it's all relevant to somebody who carries a gun every day.
In that same vein, I'd like to start with Robert and John. What are some things that you would look for, you would recommend a student look for in an intermediate course, kind of leading up to this advanced handgun course? So what should a student do that isn't local to Karl how could they go about seeking out a class in their local area, and what's some best advice you have for them finding a class that will better prepare them for this one?
Boy. I'm trying to think of how I even got into all the training stuff back when. I started with local stuff, like I said, like NRA basic pistol and stuff like that way back when. And my sad little story about that class was I of course had the SWAT officer as one of the did this part time, and I'm on the SWAT team stuff, and he was a self-described 1911 guy. And then I just remember at the time, my only handguns were SIGs. They were like DASA, like classic SIG 22, whatever. I had a 229, a 220, 226. And he picked up a SIG 220. It was this all stainless SIG 220. Picked it up and said, I don't like these double stack guns. I like 1911s. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, it's a SIG 220. It's a single stack 45. So at that point, I was like, I need to seek real training, I guess is how I would put it. So I think Karl already said it's hard not to start with some. People always ask me if you could just recommend one class for somebody, maybe they did their state mandated, if there is one for their state mandated concealed carry class. What class would you send them to? And I'm always like Tom Gibbons, 2-day combative pistol, or there's now so many Rangemaster instructors now who have been through, not just, I went through his course, but I'm not an instructor, so I wouldn't put it me. But there's so many Rangemaster instructors out there that I would start with one of them. So there might be one in your area or whatever. But Tom gets all over the country every year, still doing it at age, I don't know how old he is, 60 something, I guess. But
66 maybe. I'm not going to say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm not. He's under 70. Let's just say that.
Right. He won't be doing it forever, but he's still motoring along pretty good. So if you can get to a Tom Gibbons,
there's about 800 Rangemaster certified instructors nationally now.
Right.
And that we actually, I don't know if you have a copy of it, but there's a Rangemaster instructor Facebook group, and there's a list. And if you're not on it and you want people to be contacted, then there is a master list by state. And so we've tried to make it easier now for people that are looking for training, because just about anybody that hosts Tom probably offers their own prep course, and so that's a good pathway. The NRA's program, a couple of weeks from now, I'm hosting their new NRA concealed carry class. I'll withhold comment about the quality of that until I get through it. But the Rangemaster certification is certainly one of the better instructor certifications. The level of shooting required to earn that rating is way higher than certainly NRA or USCCA or Combat Focus or most of the other mass market national instructor programs. Tom's is up there with Masad Ayub Group or Paul Howe or some of the top tier trainers that have their own instructor program.
Yeah, and some of it's always going to depend on the instructor themselves. Claude Werner teaches NRA courses, and I would take a class with Claude any day, whatever. But not necessarily maybe the guy that I dealt with. So it just sort of depends on who you get. So I think it's just one of those hoops. A lot of instructors just kind of jump through to get that cert because everyone recognizes it. But
the longer they've been in business, the more classes they've taken, the more likely they are to be able to help you. If all their experience is law enforcement or all their experience is military, that sometimes is a red flag, because they've learned the same thing 16 times from within their bubble. And it's good to have the diversity of experience and different training with different people, because a good instructor should be able to shoot a double action, single action gun and a revolver and a 1911 and a Glock, and be able to teach the student on whatever they brought for the most part.
I mean, for people that are just starting out and looking to get the experience level to be able to take the class, finding a good solid 2-day class, whether it's Tom Gibbons, whether it's any number of other good trainers out there, if there's a local range or a local match that you can go and just watch and maybe meet somebody that can, for lack of a better term, mentor you and point you in the right direction, go on pistolforum.com and register and ask about classes in your area. I mean, I think there are actually a lot of resources out there these days where people that are interested and motivated, they can find a good class for them that's going to adequately prepare them.
Yeah, that's great. That's actually how I got started. Back in 1988, I showed up at a USPSA match and I asked the guy that won. I said, "This looks like fun. I'd like to learn how to do this. Can you teach me?" And that is how I got started in all of this back in the day. And that is still a great process, because even if that person isn't an instructor, they will know someone credible that is. And that's a way better than this guy's got the ink isn't dry on his webpage, and he's got a YouTube channel and he looks cool and he's got good heavy metal music on his, his speeded up video that makes him look really fast. I'll go train with that guy.
Yeah. I'd say as far as budgeting goes, I think a lot of folks might consider some intermediate and advanced level courses to be out of their budget, especially when it comes to some of these national these trainers that travel nationally, like Tom Gibbons. If I remember correctly, most of his programs, entry level programs, are under $400. And if you were to look at most local programs being offered in your area, if you wanted to take a 1-day defensive handgun course, you're probably looking at close to $200. So, maybe forego that class, save the $200, put another $200 aside, and get with one of these trainers, reputable trainers that travel the country. I'm not saying every trainer that travels the country putting on classes is somebody you should train with, but definitely Tom Gibbons, Karl Rehn, when these guys are in your area, or reach out to, Karl Rehn, check out the Civilian Gunfighter.com blog and read some of their after action reports on some of the trainers that they've trained with, because it's more affordable than most people would like to think. Granted, flying to, Texas or wherever from your local state might be out of the budget, but a lot of these folks they probably make it within 6 hours of where you're living on an annual basis. Take one of those classes and then save up and train with Karl, take the advanced handgun course. At that time, you're probably going to be a training junkie and catch the bug, because once you start doing it, it's something that I found that, you become passionate about and would be willing to do a whole bunch of stuff to kind of scratch that itch more often.
Oh yeah. I mean, John and I have both sought the Grail courses, if you will, the Holy Grail ones, where we're just either an instructor, is flirting with retirement or whatever, and you're just and especially after we've lost some recently who have passed away for whatever, and never got a Pat Rogers or somebody like that who John and I never got the chance to train with, and you hear stories like that, Louis Auerbach, whatever. And you're like, oh man, I don't want that chance to go away to train with so and so. So we've bitten the proverbial bullet and flown and done those types of things to be able to train with some people. I got to twice go down to train with Paul Howe, which was incredible to be able to do.
And he's always telling people he's gonna retire.
Yeah, well, when he started saying that's when it was like Christmas present for my wife. Go train with Paul. You've been talking about it for a while, and I got to go do it. And then I liked it so much.
Dave Spalding's cutting the number of classes he's teaching every year in half every year.
Right.
Ken Hackathorn is completely retired from teaching and said flatly, no, I'm not going to teach any more classes. I'm done. Clint Smith is getting up there in age. Ayub is 70. There's a bunch of guys that were the backbone of the training industry for the last 30 or 40 years. And very many of them, they're all 65 plus, and many of them have either stopped or slowing down and are on their, final trips around the country. So yeah, there's a lot of original knowledge that's beginning to fade away. And certainly anybody that's advanced level handgun motivated, you should make sure you catch some of these guys before they decide they've had enough of living in hotels and, living on the road 40 weeks a year, because when they're gone, you're going to get their, third-hand students, which is okay, but there's nothing like getting it right from the source.
Yeah, that information is going to switch hands a couple times over. And then if you have a weekend coming up, you definitely check out the schedule on krtraining.com. I don't know. It looks like you have stuff going on dang near every weekend and during the week and everything else. So somebody could make a little trip down to Texas and in your neck of the woods and probably take a few courses. They
could. A lot of the stuff, to be honest, is sold out. there's a few things still open, and I'm basically booked for the rest of the year. November, December, I usually don't go on the road. I have other things that I'm doing during those months. And then I start up again in January, and I'm already booking classes. I'm going back to John Murphy's in 2020, going to Georgia 2020, Oklahoma. I've got a bunch of things that I'm soon to be putting online to travel again and then teach. If I'm not on the road, I'm teaching at home.
That's awesome. Robert, what's one piece of advice you have for a student that's going to take this class?
Well, I mean, besides, I guess, what Karl already said about make sure this isn't like your first class or whatever. Man, one piece of advice. I guess I would say, I guess along those lines, just kind of have your ducks in a row. I mean, it was a challenging class, but challenging, but like not intimidating. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like, I think there were a couple of people in the class probably who would have used another class before they came to this one. Not disparaging them, but I just think they probably need a little bit of remediation. And Karl and Murphy both, took some extra time with them to just kind of make sure that they were all squared away and such. But they didn't really like hold the rest of us back, I wouldn't say. But I think that, for themselves, I don't know how they felt leaving there or whatever. So I would say just kind of have your ducks in a row for a class like this. And again, like, John and I, we've taken so many classes now that, like, we know how to just get set up for a class, to have all your stuff, everything that you need, clothing, drinks, whatever else that you need. Just kind of make sure you have all that stuff. We have
spare gun, spare.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I always bring a spare gun to every class now. I did a shotgun class this past weekend. I had 2 shotguns with me because shotguns tend to shake things loose and whatever. So, you just never know. And some of that's experience. We've written articles about that for our site to just, say like, okay, so you're taking a class, how do you prepare for it? Whatever. So I can't really think of anything else like specific about this class. I don't know if John has any other insights, but just having your ducks in a row, I would say.
I would say stay humble, keep an open mind, because there's a lot to learn there. And, just sort of touching on physical preparations, make sure that all your gear is squared away. This is probably not the place necessarily to go with a gun that you just picked up from the local store or a new holster that you haven't ever drawn from before. Have that squared away before you come show up.
What's the minimum round count and recommended, number of magazines that a student should have for it?
I think we ended up shooting 400 or 500 rounds. I know I told people to bring 800, but that was like if we shot every drill and ran the full 8 hours, which we didn't do. Realistically, it's probably a 500 to 600 round class, and I would like students to have 4 magazines if possible.
Yeah, I think I shot
3 is probably.
Yeah.
Good.
I probably shot around 370 rounds, I want to say, and I was fine with 3 mags. If you were going to be running it with 10 round mags, you'd probably want closer to 5. But
that makes sense.
I was just checking my AR because I couldn't remember. I shot 363 is what I shot in the class. It was a little low, but again, we kind of sped through some things again because of the heat and such. So I was fine with that. I mean, the only issue if I was shipping ammo there, because if I was traveling so far, that might have been an issue. But for me, I was just driving, so no big deal. So it was, in the high 3s. I was, more mags is always better at any class, really. I probably had 6 mags with me or something like that. But, you always bring more mags, always bring more ammo, because you just never know. So,
Yeah, the stuff I would say would be, it's okay to go practice before class. Biggest mistake I probably ever made going to a training class, I went out to the Rogers shooting school, and instead of looking in advance and watching the videos of what went on out there and actually learning what the courses of fire were going to be before I went and practicing those, I just said, I'll just go. That was, if I had watched the videos and practiced, I probably would have earned my advanced rating. And I went in cold and figured I'll just learn it all there. And that was not a good plan. And so it's okay, contact the instructor in advance and say, what should I practice before I come to class? Because often they'll tell you, right? And they'll tell you, yeah, if you have time, go do these things.
Yeah.
And that'll help you be ready and do well on class day.
Yeah, I've done that before with some different instructors. Ask them things like, or I've given them sort of like my training resume at that point in time, but like, am I like the appropriate student for this class or whatever it might be, and then things to practice, things to prepare for, whatever. Of course, in Carl's case, he does have a book that
buy the
kind of
book.
says all that stuff, but not everyone has that, but it does help. So yeah.
Were you guys shooting from concealment, outside the waistband? And talk to us, what guns were you shooting?
Okay, I shot. I was pretty much dressed like I am now. It's like my typical attire, for every day is typically a button-down shirt. So I was shooting from concealment. I think there might have been a couple people who weren't, but in the class who weren't shooting from concealment.
We had some that were shooting from like their USPSA competition rig.
Right. Yeah.
That didn't matter to me. It was
Right.
strictly, here's the drills, shoot the drills. Thankfully, we didn't have anybody in a battle belt. I'm not a big fan of like the costume sort of, battle belt sort of thing. If it's not a competition rig that you're wearing on match day, I'd like it to be everyday carry gear, whether it's concealed or not. If it's open carry, I'd like it to be, if you're going to do that, then it should still be something reasonable. No drop legs, no, SWAT team gear. Cosplay kind of Call of Duty stuff. I don't get those kind of students, probably because I send out the negative vibes that I don't want those students, but it's not my thing. I'm much more a practical everyday carry kind of person.
Yeah. And even though Carl obviously has a strong competitive shooting background, you could kind of take the class sort of like with the mindset of either thing. You could either look at it as sort of like, I want to improve at my next match, or I want to improve, and it goes back to that question that we got earlier, how do I, improve as a concealed carry practitioner? Whenever possible, when I take a class, I try to shoot from concealment. I've taken classes that were actually concealed, specific concealed carry courses, and seen people there in like a battle belt or whatever. I'm like, why are you in this class? So I shot from concealment. This particular class, I actually, if memory serves, I actually broke out an older holster. I think I used my Dale Frick Archangel appendix into the waistband holster. It has like a homemade wedge that I made for it out of like a yoga block or whatever, which I'll probably be writing an article about at some point. Wilderness belt. My pistol was a Glock 19. It was this one. It's unloaded, so I'm not gonna ruin your guys' show and like put like a round through the computer screen here. But it's
That would make it better.
Yeah.
It would bring some excitement to it. But it's I have like
We could have 5 simultaneous negligent discharges.
Sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, so I have like identical Glock 19s, basically, both Gen 3s, both with the same stippling, done by Alex Diaz of Gun Grip Customs down in North Carolina, which was something I had done last year. So they're both basically identical, same sights. They both just have a standard Glock 17 trigger in it because I prefer the smoother face trigger. Mariglow iDot Pro sights, the orange type. This particular one has a KKM barrel, and that's just because this particular one I always found I was less accurate with this one than my other one. So this one has a KKM barrel. My other one does not. So this one I primarily use for training and for competition, and then I have another one for carry purposes. Oh, I also have the Tau Development Group gadget, the SCD, which is handy if you carry appendix as a little extra measure of security or whatever you would call it. So you put your thumb on that when you're holstering it, and it prevents the trigger from getting pulled by a drawstring or a shirt tail or something like that. I use standard magazines, but I have a couple of Magpul mags in there too. And the ammo that I shot was Blazer Brass, 115 grain. So that was pretty much it. Gear. This is not like a gear-intensive class in any way. I mean, it's like bring your gun, bring your holster. Just make sure it all works and go from there. I'll let John talk. I gotta let my dog out real quick. But go ahead, John.
About early this year, I transferred over to the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 compact and the 9mm. So I was carrying that. JM Custom Kydex appendix inside the waistband, outside the waistband mag carrier, single mag carrier, and using Blazer Brass 147 grain, which I've had really good results with so far. So pretty much, except for the ammo, same thing I carry every day.
Love it. I've been I switched from the M&P 9C over to the Glock 48 recently, and I've been pretty happy with it. Those M&P 2.0s though, those are some quality guns. I was just looking for something a little bit thinner that I can carry around a little bit easier, more comfortably. Got a couple 15-round mags coming for that, so that'll be. Carl, did you pick up the Glock 48?
I'm a Glock 48 guy, and I just pre-ordered my Shield Arms magazines, and I'm eager to test those too.
Did you get their +5 extension for it?
No. I got the mag catch though. I got the aluminum metal mag catch, because supposedly you need that if you're going to go. I've got 2 Glock 48s. I've got one that I carry all the time, and then I've got my tinkering gun. So the one with the Swamp Fox sight on is the tinkering gun, and that's going to be the one that I put the Shield Arms magazines and stuff in and play with that. I'm hoping maybe they show up in time for the Gabe White class, because that's going to be probably 1,500 rounds over a weekend or something. So that'll be a good test of all the gear. I'm just really I don't just change carry gear without really running it hard.
That's good. That's very intelligent. That Swamp Fox that you're running that on the Glock 48.
Yep.
What's the overhang on that like, and does it bother you at all?
It's a little and no. I got just for a quick and dirty put it on the gun mount. It's Barry Dueck, DUECK. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Sorry if I'm messing it up, guys. But they make a mount that goes in place of the rear sight on the gun, and it fits on the 48. It gives you a rear sight, an RMR mount, and a front sight. And so with one little plate, you get co-witness irons and the dot mount. And for a quick and dirty, put it on something to try it, really nice product, worked fine. If you get one, Loctite all the screws. I'm just saying from experience, it will work loose. The friction of tapping it into the rear sight notch is not enough, and you have to use the set screws they give you and tighten them down with a Loctite, and it will stay in place then. But that's kind of my quick and dirty test. If I decide I'm going to keep using it, I'll probably send the slide on that gun off somewhere to get milled and mount the thing lower. But for right now, just for playing around, super handy. I'm actually I'm going to use one of their mounts and put a dot of some kind on my 17T for Force on Force here in 2 weeks, so that for the first time we'll have an RMR gun in use for Force on Force and get an idea of how the red dot works in that, because that's something I haven't tested or evaluated yet. I'm eager to get some information on that for students here in the next month.
Looking forward to reading what you find out there. Wanted to ask earlier, what's your goal for the students of the advanced handgun course? What's the goal that you have for them?
I don't really have performance goals. The goal is that they go home with a structured practice program and performance data on what they do, right? So for every drill, I say your goal should be this, and if you're achieving that goal, then here's your stretch goal, right? If you can run the fast drill in 8 seconds clean, then you should be trying to do it in 6 seconds clean, for example. So it's really, I don't want to check the box and say you've achieved some level and here's your gold star and quit practicing. It's really, here's stuff you can practice, and these are drills that are hard enough that you can continue practicing them and just make the time limits shorter and shorter and shorter, and here's what Grandmaster level is. So it's really, I'm trying to send them home with homework. I'm trying to send them home with structured practice that they can use later on their own, because the assumption is anybody that's coming to this particular class probably practices.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Carl's probably, I mean, of all the classes I've taken, I'm trying to think if anyone else really gave homework the same. I mean, you know, as a student, I always take notes. It always pains me when I see all these students in class and no one's taking notes except for me in any class. And of course, I took notes for this one as well. But you know, if you take notes, yeah, you could note what drills you shot in this class or that class. But like Carl, I mean, he gives you everything. You have data sheets to enter the information on. You have descriptions of the drills. So when you go when you go back home to your home range or whatever, you don't have to sit there and say what was the par time for this, or which target did we use? It's all there. And then there's even a page of like tweaks of like common errors that people make in just shooting in general. Like, if you're pushing left, this is probably what you're doing, those types of things. So, kudos to him for having all that stuff set up for us already, and to have those handouts for us, because I've already made use of them. Like I said, I'm kind of going through all the drills myself and kind of testing myself out on my own with them, mixed in with other drills that I'm doing. But with each range visit, I might do like 2 of the ones that we did either from class or from the book.
It's just from a lifetime of being a student who was always bad at taking notes during classes, because you're busy doing stuff. Right. You're reloading magazines, you're drinking water, you're going to the bathroom, whatever it is you got to do between drills. And it's like, okay, well, I want to make sure everybody gets the notes. So here's the notes, and that takes the pressure off.
Yeah, this is why I also recommend, this is why, if possible, I would recommend to people, take a class with somebody. I'll try to take a class with John, because when possible, we can't obviously always do that, but when we can, because then, especially like a 2-day class, we might have time at the hotel or something like that to sit down and like compare notes and say, like, what did we do after this, and what did we, whatever. So it's always nice to do that, to be able to compare notes afterwards, or just try to meet someone there in class and get an email address from somebody or whatever, and that, that's kind of how John and I met. You don't have to become a blogger afterwards, but you can at least get some notes down.
Yeah, that's awesome. Andy and I are taking a Masada Youth course here in a month or so, a little over a month. So Andy, you're going to be my note-taking buddy.
The range or the classroom?
The range.
Okay, because if you do the Mag 20, I've done the Mag 20 classroom one, and I had my laptop with me, and like single-spaced Microsoft Word, like whatever, 12 font or whatever. I think I took like 17 pages of notes or something like that. Like I spent the entire time, and could have done twice as many. It was ridiculous. I
think we're going to try to host his classroom portion next year. I was talking to the host that is hosting him here locally this year. And I was like, hey, man, why aren't you doing the classroom stuff? That's what I really want. And he said they had trouble filling the classroom portion here. But they sold out the range portion. They sold out I think they sent out the notice, hey, Masada Youth's coming into town. And then like a week later, he's like, all right, waitlist spots only.
Yeah.
The cool thing about his class is he will give you a course to fire. And as you work through his program, he cuts all the time limits down. So they call it the single speed, double speed, triple speed, quad speed. So the first time you take Mag 20 range, you're running the single speed. But once you have the course of fire, then cut the times in half and work on that. And if you can do that, cut the original times down by a third and run it. And if you can do that, then you take the course of fire and you cut the times down by a factor of 4. And at that point, you're shooting basically USPSA master level, high A USPSA master level times. So instead of 25 seconds, you get 6.25 to run the same drill.
Okay, that's probably.
So it's his little course of fire is very clever in that way, that you can make it difficult by dividing the times down. So 25 seconds, 12 and a half, whatever it is, 8 point something, and then 6.25.
Interesting. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. And then we got to get down to Texas and train with you. Are your 2020 classes selling out yet? Or do you have the calendar up for 2020?
No, I'm still putting plans together for 2020. I'm still working things out. That's what happens in November and December, is I catch my breath and figure out what's coming next. I've got a couple things on the calendar. I'm doing a 2-day active shooter class, the state certified active shooter class in January. And John Murphy's coming back down in March for a weekend. And we've got a few other things in the queue that we'll get up on the webpage shortly.
Awesome. Just taking some notes real quick on that. Excellent. Well, shoot, it seems like it's gone by a lot quicker than it actually has. We're about an hour and 20 into it. Before we jump off of here, I'd like each of you all to tell us something that you do that's not shooting related, if you don't mind.
So that we do that's not shooting related?
Yeah, what do you like to do if it's not pulling triggers and tapping keys on a keyboard?
I dabbled in competitive mountain biking, but prefer to just do it for myself, just for personal fitness and just getting out on the hills and in the trees and on the trails and stuff like that. Haven't done it as much lately. Been mainly once the kids came, that kind of there's a little less of that going on, but still like the running and the other stuff. And now a lot of that is just dog walking. Now it's terrible. The other thing that I haven't done as much of, but I used to do a lot of, again, it reaches the point where some of these things become hobbies. I mean, I'm a training junkie. It's become my hobby. Let's be real about it. But not that it isn't without other benefits, but it's sort of just what I like to do. But one of my other hobbies was, but I haven't done as much, is building models, actually. So I used to build a lot of models, like military models, tanks and things like that. So and used to compete like in shows and such with those as well. So just haven't been able to do as much of it lately. So
that's pretty. My kids would love to destroy a model that I built.
Yeah, I was one of those people who didn't put like M80s inside of them, because I actually like them, but I guess I could see the allure.
Let's play with this. Okay, now it's flying off the stairs.
For my part, again, now that I have 2 young kids, it's really impacted my free time. But I did a lot of scuba diving. Actually progressed all the way to being Trimix certified in technical diving. I really don't do a lot of that anymore, but spend a lot of time just recreationally scuba diving.
Nice.
So.
On my end, I'm going to move the camera here. Don't get vertigo. We're basically in my recording studio. The other thing that I do when I'm not doing on the range is I play music for money. And we get the camera back where it belongs here, maybe. Okay, I'm just going to hold it in place. There. So I played last year. I played about 142 gigs for money, and I'm on track to do more than that. November, December. That's why I'm not teaching guns. I'm playing 6 nights a week. November, December. So yeah, I do that. I've got a couple of albums out on Amazon and iTunes and all that. If you type my name into Spotify, you'll find. I think there's just one album left up there. I'm about to do a re-release of some older stuff that were remastered, and I'm trying to get that done here next month. Turn 2 CDs of old material into 1 CD with some bonus tracks. But there is at least 1 CD, and I think Midnight Express Band. We've got a band CD up there too that you can download. But yeah, that's my other thing that I do. And that plus taking care of the range, that's about it. That's a lot.
That's it. That's your 3 full-time jobs that you have going on there.
It is.
Shows a year. That's a lot. Holy cow. Nice.
Well, like tomorrow night, I'll be at an Italian restaurant playing grand piano and singing for 2 hours. So I go early, I eat, I sing and play for 2 hours, and I'm home by 10. So it's not like rock and roll tour kind of stuff. It's usually, but if you go on YouTube, if you type my name into YouTube, there's videos. One of the bands I'm in is a 9-piece band with a horn section. We did a big show with 3 backup singers, so we had 12 people on stage, and we played to about 3,000 people over the 4th of July in Brenham, Texas. That was a super big show, and there are some new videos, multi-camera, multi-track audio that I posted one a couple of weeks ago. I've got one more I'm going to finish editing, but there's a bunch of videos from that show, and that was I'm real proud of that. The band sounded good, and you'll see me up there in my 70s costume.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice. I think we talked about that.
Do what?
I think we were talking about that the last time. Were you working on mastering the audio for it and getting that all put together? I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, I think there's like 8 or 9 videos from that show that are online now that I finally got put together, and I've got one last one that I need to polish up before I post it.
Nice, perfect. And then Andy, before we jump off, any parting advice for our listeners?
No, it was a good podcast. I have a face for radio, obviously, and I've been really busy at work, so I'm sitting here yawning, and these guys are probably like, this dude's totally bored. But yeah, it was a really good podcast. I'm just exhausted. So no, I think I'm excited. Jeremy has kind of really latched onto Karl Rehn's stuff recently, and he's told me a lot about it. He's told me about his book probably a dozen times, and I had to ask in the chat, what was the name of the book again? And I just bought it on Kindle right now, so I have something to read in my spare time. So
Oh, good.
yeah, so I think that's,
Well,
that's a good starting point.
I will have the historical handgun book. I have promised myself I will have it out by SHOT Show 2020. Topic for another day, but I just spent the weekend at Bill Wilson's ranch with Ken Hackathorn and Rob Leatham and Masada Ayub and a whole bunch of other people from the 1970s and 80s, vintage era, and got a ton of information that's going to help me finish up the key parts of that book. And so I'm trying to get that one finished out and get a new book out for 2020.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Another podcast I heard too, and I think it was Givens, and Givens was talking about when you come to his class, you have a test. He gives you some homework to start learning about the basics, of historical of handguns and stuff, and it piqued my interest. And then I heard it again. I think it was on the podcast I was telling you about the other day when you were talking about red dots back in the late 80s. And so I'm really interested in learning that, because us gun guys, we love to run and gun and shoot and, see all the that we have today. But I think we sometimes need to take a step back and learn where all this stuff came from. Pretty often we talk about the why in instruction, like, why am I teaching somebody how to do this? But we need to take it a step farther too. And I think we can't forget how it all started in the beginning. So I'm really interested in that book as well.
You will like Ayub's Mag 20 range, because you have to shoot a third of the class isosceles, a third of the class Weaver, and a third of the class from Chapman stance. And nobody shoots Weaver and Chapman anymore, but you will learn it because you have to use it during the course of fire. He's the last guy that still teaches all three of them. And it's interesting. At that thing at Wilson's, all the courses of fire we shot in the fun match were pre-1985. They were all like IPSC World Shoot stages from 1980.
That's awesome.
Where are you guys going to be releasing those videos? I saw a bunch of pictures that made me jealous of a bunch of just you rock stars.
So Michael Bain was there. It'll be an episode of Shooting Gallery. I don't know, a couple of 3 or 4 months, could be 6 months before you see it. Wilson Combat, Bill Wilson had his video guys there. And if you follow the Wilson Combat YouTube channel, they will be putting out the interviews and some of the side pieces. But the main match was mainly recorded by Michael Bain for a Shooting Gallery episode.
Perfect. How often do you do the?
I will have multiple blog posts up about it. I've probably got 8 different posts that I'm going to do about different aspects of my time down there. And so, follow blog.krtraining.com. Tomorrow morning, I'll try to get the first one written and then kind of map out all of the different aspects of that weekend and different bits and pieces of things. For example, I'm going to be posting the entire course of fire for the 1977 World Shoot.
That's awesome.
So a bunch of oddball stuff like that.
How often do you do the your historical? Is it the historical handgun course that you put on? A couple times a year?
Usually once or twice a year. Honestly, it's an incredibly hard course to sell. I thought force on force training was hard to sell until I started trying to do the historical handgun. And everybody wants to do 5-yard mag dumps from their battle belt with the red dot appendix carry gun. And nobody wants to shoot the FBI Qual from 1940 with a double action revolver. That's, you have to really, I think, be deep into it before you're ready to do that stuff, apparently. So honestly, what I'm going to do is in 2020, my intention is to roll out a 2-day instructor improvement course that includes some of the historical stuff along with some coaching material that I have, plus some of the advanced handgun stuff. So it would be like a 2-day class that would not be an instructor certification, but it'll be an instructor improvement. And Tom and I have been sharing our passion for the history stuff. I started talking about it. He started putting together his own collection of materials on it. And he's been like his master instructor class, his 3rd level instructor class. Everybody's going to have to shoot revolver and do. I think he's been reinvigorated to dive into that stuff because of he and I talking about it so much, which is very cool because that's exposing more people to it. And I think that's great.
That's awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to that class, and I definitely want to take both of those classes. So you'll probably be seeing some of my money this year for sure. I definitely want to take the historical handgun course and the instructor course.
Well, I'm talking to Murphy maybe about hosting the instructor class in fall 2020. I got to get back. I told him I'd get back with him about it.
Okay. Perfect. Well, we'll make sure we keep all of our listeners and viewers up to date with all of that good stuff. Definitely appreciate you guys jumping on here with us tonight. As always, I feel like we can go another couple hours with this stuff and just I need a deeper and deeper bank account with each guest that we have on here, because it seems like there's no shortage of classes that I want to take or instructors that I want to train with. And Karl Rehn, you're definitely near the top of that list for me in 2020.
I warned you my answers always run long.
No, I love it, because if they don't, then I talk more and then we lose subscribers and everything else. So I'm going to have a desk pop for some of these episodes where I do more talking than I should. So we'll give you all the rest of the evening back. We definitely appreciate everybody jumping on with us this evening. We'll see you next week. And remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. Stay safe. And we should be offline.